Stonebridge, welcome.
Brad, my man, how are you?
I'm doing well. The weather's getting warmer. It's a pleasure to speak to you, and thanks for being part of
Yes,
Promotion's ongoing to be continued video series
of
with
course.
artists and remixers and producers that we think are the greatest of all time.
I heard rumors about other legends.
Well, people hear a lot of rumors about me, and some of them are even good.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you, as I do with anybody that we have a table talk chat
Mhm.
with, about your life.
My life.
You know, we know the hit records, we know Sweemix, we know BPM, we
Mhm.
know Sirius XM, we know the #1 Billboard records. We certainly know all the remixes that you've done for my company, and gratefully so. The Ariana Grandes, the Sias, the Diana Rosses, the Pinks, the classics, right?
Mhm.
So let's go back. Let's go way back.
Okay. I had a brother. I looked up to him. He was my hero. And he was into really weird, yes, Genesis, symphonic rock, that kind of thing. And so because he was, Camel was one of his absolute favorites too. And I thought, that's kind of weird, but okay. Since my brother likes it, I must like it. And I noted, guitar looks kind of cool. So I forced my mom to buy me a guitar and send me to lessons. And it was so boring. They didn't play Yes and Genesis songs. It was like,
The scales.
too boring. So I spent my youth, listening to those records, trying to figure out the chords. And that's probably why I later on, I have a tendency to go deep chords, like really complex and stuff. I think these textures came from, growing up with that massive, big atmospheres, that kind of thing, So already early, I was into that complex stuff. So that was the story why I was interested. And then the next thing that happens is my dad, he was a frugal guy and I wanted to save money. And my sister's graduation party, she said, Dad, I need a DJ, I need a DJ. And my dad said, Stone, you're going to be the DJ. But I never DJed in my life. Well, learn. So I had to contact a guy that used to be a DJ in a school body. And he said, oh, Stone, I was sort of retired. Yeah, but you got the records, you got the turntables. So we had to buy a mixer and practice real quick. And because her party was the first one in the whole class, I got to do all of them parties. And then we started hanging the record store, and was this really cool DJ in Stockholm called Rene. Everybody was looking up to him in Stockholm. And he discovered this weird new music called house music from Chicago. And it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. If Rene
What
likes it,
year is this?
this must have been, my sister's graduation party was 83. So I was like a mobile DJ. And you hang in the record store and you get to know who the cool DJs are that played in the big clubs in Stockholm. You kind of looked up to them. Maybe if you were lucky, you were sitting in a neighboring table at the cafe. They invited you over. Hey, bro, come over. Yeah, when you get big, you might do a proper gig. And I was like, oh, thanks for even talking to me, that kind of shit. Anyway, house music came, and he also discovered Disconet and Hot Tracks. These were remix services from the US. And one day when we're sitting in that cafe, he said, guys, we should do a Swedish one, like a Sweemix. And that's really how it started. The coolest DJ in Stockholm, got a bunch of guys together and we did a studio. And it already after a year, it was clear that, I lived around the corner. So I basically lived in that studio every night. I was down there doing weird mixes and stuff like that. So that's a long story. So it's actually my dad's, he ordered me to be the DJ at my sister's graduation. And my big brother, he was into complex music, kind of jazz, symphonic rock, that kind of thing. So these two things led to where I am now, more or less.
So they say that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes, you can say that.
And trial by fire.
Yes, definitely.
You learn how to do that because you're thrown into it, and regardless of the reason why, you do it.
Yeah.
Then I think for a lot of people, myself included, we had a moment when we realized this music or this music thing wasn't necessarily a career. But I mean, you said going back that you looked up to your brother and he listened to these records, but obviously there was something in this music that attracted you.
Yes.
I had my moment. I was about 8 years old, and I was watching a television show on the educational channel in New York, which was called PBS. It was Channel 13. We only had like 5 channels at that time,
Yeah.
because of my age. And they had previewed a record by an act called The Main Ingredient,
Ah.
an R&B act. I knew nothing about him. I was 7
Yeah,
or
that's funky. Yeah.
But I remember watching this act perform this record,
Mhm.
and I was riveted to the television. And the moment the song was over, I remember the name of the act, and I literally ran to the record store, and
Yeah.
I said to the guy behind the counter, "Do you have the new 45 by The Main Ingredient?" He said, "What's the name of the song?" I said, "I don't know, because the person who mentioned them on television didn't mention the song, or I happened to miss that." He said, "There is no new song by the Main Ingredient." I said, "Do you have the album?" He said, "I'll give you the latest album." I said, "Can I listen to it here to make sure that the song was on?"
Mhm.
He said, "No, you have to buy it." I said, "No problem." I bought it and I ran home and I put the needle on every track. Ba, 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 ba. It wasn't there.
No.
I ran back to the record store and I said, "Can I have the album before that?" He said, "Sure." I said, "Could I listen to it?" He said, "No." I bought it. I went home. Ba, 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 not on there.
Mhm.
Apparently, it was a new song
Yeah.
that they were previewing as part of this promotional thing
Oh, yeah.
called "Everybody Plays the Fool."
Mhm.
I didn't know at 7 that this is going to be the business I'm going to end up in. But I remember that moment,
Mhm.
that was an odd moment. That why would a white Jewish kid from Manhattan be so riveted to an R&B act from the Midwest?
It caught you.
It caught me. That's right. You said it. Something happened. Something clicked.
Yes.
A switch went off, and now I'm in it.
Yes.
So
We're lifers, Brad.
that's
What
right.
can we
And
say?
that's
You
right.
starting
And-
from 8, I was sort of maybe 8, 9, 10 when I started. We're lifers.
and my expression of a lifer is somebody who's going to be in this business for life,
Yes.
until such time as you don't want to be, or they're going to take you out of the studio feet first.
Mhm. Well, I
Okay,
know
so
this
that for
started.
you is 1983, and that's when I started my company, approximately 1983. So
Yeah.
you start to get the studio thing down. You're in the studio every night. You're
Yes,
definitely
yes.
digging it. You like it. Certainly feeling hip about it. What was the first record you worked on that you realized, you know what? I may, I may, there may be something to this for me.
Well, it was funny actually. Now you mention it, I had a cult hit called Jazzy John's Freestyle Groove, and it was like we had this thing called Basement Division. It was an EP, like 4, 5, 6 tracks, and it blew up in the UK. They absolutely loved it, and I think Pete Tong played it or something. And I heard this through the grapevine. There was no internet at the time, so news traveled really slow.
Had you been to the UK?
Have I been to the UK?
Had you been to the UK when that happened?
Well, I heard it from friends, and then it was like years later I realized that was a cult hit. Every sort of rave and they played it. It was a funky classic. They had that rare groove moments. It was kind of funky, rare groove, and it actually sampled a few.
But you hadn't gone to the UK to promote that. It just happened.
Well, this was before, as I said, no internet, and I had no idea. It was on an EP, and it happened to blow up. It was one of those, in people's crates, and they played it at raves and underground parties and stuff like that. And I think that led to Champion. They thought I sounded interesting.
Champion Records.
Yes, Champion Records, and they had this. We have this record by Robin Stone. Oh, that's interesting. I'm Stone, and she's Robin Stone. It's meant to be. Send the tape, and it was back in those days they had to send the 2-inch tape. And I did a mix, and it was very funky, little guitars and keyboards and pretty. It was actually the bass line, but with preset number 16 on a chord, which is pick bass. And then 2 days later, you sent it by FedEx, and you had to wait. And then he called. "It's all right," said Mel at Champion.
Mel Medali.
Yeah, Mel Medali. "It's all right, but no, you can do better." And I got really pissed off, and I had a gig that night. So I fired up the 2-inch and I tore down everything but the vocal and the kick drum. The engineer had recorded it way too hot, so it was massive kick drum. And then I did a simple kit, and I listened to the bass line. It's kind of cool. What's the next sound like? Which was organ too on the M1. Ooh, that's cool. Added two string pad things in the chorus, and the last thing, it needs some attitude. Mel called it sweet and sour. I had the sweet bit down, so I distorted some synth. Oh, that will do. Rave had started to come in a little bit in Sweden around 91, 92. So I added that, and I was like, that's fine. And I had to do like 8, 9. He was clever, Mel. He never told me this is a worldwide smash. He said, it's all right, but maybe you have to edit, you know. And it was back in the days where juniors, Junior Vasquez and those guys, he wanted a 12-minute version, like a 10-minute. It was the first white labels were insanely long, like at least 10 minutes.
The way they should be.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, back in those days, people actually listened to also. Now it's like 247 extended mix. Have you seen? It's crazy.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Carry on.
Yeah, okay. We'll get to that. But he was very clever. He said, it's all right. Yeah, we'll see. And then they put it out on white label, and it was a massive underground hit. You know, everybody played it. And then I went to London in 93, and I was, you know, as you do, you come into the hotel room, put your bag on the bed, you put on the television, and it was a Thursday night, so it was Top of the Pops. And I hear, what? And it was on TV. It was top 5 in the UK.
Mel hadn't told you.
No, of course not, because my fee would go up. So he had me do a lot of mixes.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you know, the fees go up and everything. And he had licensed it to Atlantic in the US, and it started to blow up everywhere. And it was crazy. So, but, you know, it was, I mean, it was a great record to do. I mean, it basically gave me a career double quick, you know, so I'm not bitter about it. You know, he paid me very little, by the way. I split it with other guys that did other mixes too. So it was like not much.
But again, to our point initially in this conversation, what he did was turn down the first mix.
Yes.
Which forced you
Absolutely
to revisit the project.
Yes.
And had that not happened, is it safe to say that maybe your career would not have taken the trajectory, or taken a slower trajectory, or no
I think
trajectory?
we can easily say that you know, I mean, I could have had an alternative path, but, you know, it led to, I think it was at least 5, 6 years of you know, back to back. It was like crazy.
And the irony of that is that pad, I call it the pad,
yeah,
is so prevalent today.
Yeah.
People are using that particular sound more over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Not only in remixes, but in original productions.
Oh, yeah. I got a single the other day from Germany. It was actually no shame, the whole bass line.
and is that one of the reasons that you, I believe, got one of the Songwriter of the Year awards with Jason Derulo? He used that same sound?
He had, I don't remember the mix completely. I never did like a proper Robin S, you know, like using the same drums or everything. I used the organ on a few things, you know, but he had, I think the original was the organ bass line. I don't think I did my, yeah. He definitely had a little influence there, for sure.
Well, the absolutely iconic, right?
Yeah.
So we fast forward, what's now 30 years?
Yes.
Your studio is at home?
Yes.
Which no longer really... the 24-track, 48-track SSL boards. Those days.
No, I got rid of that. I had a massive board. I mean,
everything now really on your laptop. It's convenient.
No. I'm old school like that. I have a proper big computer with like 5 discs, you know, the biggest I could get at the time, and a massive screen. And I use universal audio, so I have a lot of analog, you know, like Vibe plugins, you know. So I'm not a laptop guy. It just doesn't feel right, you know. I need a big.
Your father encouraged you to become a DJ.
Yes.
Your brother was the impetus for you to listen to music.
Yes.
And that as a father yourself, I think that you have pass this on to one of your sons.
Oh yes. I mean, my kids, I mean, I was never home. So they sometimes my wife dropped them off in the studio and they were playing games and they heard the kick drums and the claps. So they, I mean, from the age 0, you know, until they were like 8, 9. And then they said, Dad, we want a program. We want a program. So we started with a simple, you know, like there was a Logic version, like really rudimentary kind of, they got it each. And of course they started to produce hip hop. That was hip hop beats, you know, they wanted to rap and everything. But, you know, as things progressed, you know, I mean, they're insane. Axel is insanely talented producer, you know, it's like really good. Damon has now started to do game programming and music for that and complex stuff. So they're still, you know, in the media. But, you know, it was really heartwarming. And I also brought them every summer. We went to Italy through France, did gigs and everything. So they sort of saw the culture from age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, they're 29 now. So they basically grew up in the studio and music people came here. I, of course, invited people from New York, from London, everywhere to stay here. Dan was furious, but you know, so there was a lot of geek talk and they picked up on this, you know, so they have totally, you know, grown up with it.
So tell me about your wife.
Oh, she's a singer. That's how we met. I produced her. She was in a, her and her sister were singing in a band. I don't know how we heard about it. Oh, I know. We produced a Soul Man and it was just, it needed some spice. So I asked an engineer, do you happen to know any backing vocalists? You know, like, oh yeah, I know these 2 girls, sisters. They're insane. Call them. And they came down and I was blown away. Wow. Oh, you signed? No, not really. No. Come into Swemix, you know, we need to talk. And then I produced, and as you know me, I'm obsessed. You know, I basically lived in the studio, and they loved it. They couldn't believe a guy that most engineers are. Oh, it's dinner time. I need my cup of tea. Now I was like, hey, Stone, do you ever eat? Oh, sorry, I forgot. You know, it's like I was obsessed, and I think they were impressed with that. This is a music guy. You know, this is the right guy for us. Plus, I didn't like the ordinary pop at the time, which in Sweden in, you know, mid 80s wasn't a good time in Sweden. There was no R&B, it was no flavor at all. It was like
What was going on in Sweden at the time?
At the time it was cheesy, simple pop, you know, like really quick tempos and like very cheesy. Big sing-along choruses. There was no urban ingredient.
Like Ace of Base, things like that?
No black at all. It was like really, really, you know, simple 2 chords, you know.
Milli
like,
Vanilli.
Hey?
Milli Vanilli.
Yes. Oh, well, that was kind of funky. At least it had a funky beat.
Well, no, they were black. It didn't mean it was funky.
Yeah, that's true. But it was Frank Farian. He was very pop.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was super impressed. And also I mentioned some references, you know, like really weird bands like Left Field. I wasn't sort of middle of the road. I was more like funky and this is my guy, you know. And then as we spent so much time in the studio, we became a couple really, which was practical. So we could talk about music at home and talk in the studio and all the time. And then my twin boys came. So it's been a big music family, you know, the whole way. So I never had that problem. You need to come back home. Dinner's ready. I never had that. Never. Oh, it's one of those, she said on the phone. Oh, okay, I'll see you later then. So she was very understanding, being a music person herself. You know how it is with music. There is no clock, really.
I do. I spent a couple of weeks in the music business myself. I certainly know what that's about.
Yeah.
And I also know about commitment, and people who don't understand it, you can't explain it. But here's the thing also about that. What we're talking about really is passion, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized that, you know, for all the years that I've been fortunate to be in this business and surround myself with people like yourself, is that passion is something you cannot teach.
No.
And that, you know, everybody has one or more talents in their life.
Yes.
And if we're fortunate, it's a train that catches the track.
Mm-hmm.
I think, unfortunately, the lion's share of people are doing things in their life for their career that is not part of the passion. I understand clearly that, you know, we work as for a financial means to an end, right? I'm of the ilk, as I'm sure you know, that if I don't find it interesting or exciting, I won't do it.
No.
I won't even come to work. Part of my job is to make my job interesting.
Yes.
And if I think that I'm not interested, there's no possible way that you or any of the constituents that we deal with are going to be interested. I think it comes from the top down. So with my choices, with records that we curate in terms of remixes or choices, I'm not interested in the size of the act. I'm not interested in the producer of the act. I'm interested in the quality of the song.
Yes.
I'm
Many
interested.
forget.
I'm interested in one listen records.
Yeah.
You know, for me, with the passion, it hits me or it doesn't.
Yeah.
If it hits me, I must listen to it 50 times in a row.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't, I can barely get through it once and I'll never listen to it again. I'm not being dramatic. This is true. I will
No.
never listen to it again. If I don't love it, how could I possibly expect you to love it?
Exactly. How are you going to push it if you don't believe it? If you don't like
Now,
it?
now, clearly with art, you know, people say, what's art worth? Art's worth what somebody will pay for it or what they find interesting. We
Mhm.
can't second guess
No,
what other people are going to like.
we can't.
I mean, we can sort of narrow it down based on their prior history, but we never really know. So I think part of my job, part of your job, part of the job of anybody in any profession is to take the necessary right action, because we cannot control the result.
No, but Brad, if you love it, you can bet there's going to be more people. I mean, if you think it's okay, then you push it. Oh, we got this new record, you know. Same with me remixing. Yeah, it's okay. I need the money. I mean, it's like it doesn't work. But if
So
we
let's
believe,
so that's a really good point. Let's talk about something else. You just said okay, and this
Mhm.
may be a little bit off topic, but I want to keep. I want to talk about this.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, for people in the United States, and this is my opinion, right?
Mhm.
Mediocrity has become the new gold standard in terms of product and in terms of service, in terms of the way we treat each other. Gone are the days where we're looking to do better, to achieve more,
Yeah.
to outdo what we've done, to outdo what others. Now I believe it's let me do the job to get it done, not to get it done properly. And that's what we're talking about. I learned that from my father. Who taught you that?
You told me.
Who taught you?
I think years and years of experience. I never, I was never driven by the money. You know, it was a passion for the music and the possibility of creating, you know, like a big mix. Oh, I can hear this totally, and you know, work the song, like you say, like it's all about the song at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And if I really like it and I feel passionate about it, it sort of comes through, you know, like same with you and your job. If it comes through, you promote it to a radio station, you know, if you're excited, you know, they're more likely, you can tell. So I think the problem today is that it's hashtag, you know, what can we put on this? You know, is there a brand we can attach to this? Is there a famous name? Oh, she met Dua Lipa across the street. She, you know, that's a good story, man. And then she came up with this song. I mean, it's a typical 2021 marketing thing. You know, you tag it onto something else. No one talks about the actual song. And I
No,
think that's
no.
crucial.
That the composition, the melody, and the lyric, and the quality of the vocal
Yes.
is not important.
No.
You know what has become prevalent in our business, and I think this is a good thing,
Mm.
is that the remix for me, right, is equivalent to a frame around a piece of art.
Yes.
That musical composition is melody and lyric,
Mm.
and a painting is the color,
Mm.
is the subject. The remix for me is the frame that reframes a composition so that people who would not normally look at it in that kind of museum will look at it and appreciate it in another kind of museum.
Yes.
But this is what's happened. The frame has overshadowed the
Yeah.
composition.
The frame is, there's a little art piece in the middle, like an
That's
eye.
right. That's right. That's right. Now, it's of course, it's wonderful for people like yourself because it's turned you into an artist
Mhm.
that's gone from DJing at your sister's party to DJing as a mobile DJ to becoming a club DJ to becoming a remixer to becoming a producer to becoming an artist to
Yeah.
owning your own record label. So you've really, you've grabbed the bull by the horns and you've held on for dear life, and it's clearly done well. The problem, as I see it right now, is somewhere along the lines and in the pecking order, as the British would say, the music business has lost the plot. It's lost the plot. But I'm going to show you something.
Yes.
Stay right there.
Yes.
This, Sten, is the first record I ever owned.
Woo.
I was 7, and my Aunt Dora bought me this record,
Mm-hmm.
and she bought me a portable record player.
Oh.
It was blue and white with a handle.
Philips, probably.
I have no idea, but I'll tell you what I did like. I liked the way this record sounded.
Yeah.
And I liked the way this vinyl looked.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the interesting thing. This is the very first Beatles album that came to the United States.
Mhm.
On the record, which was titled Meet the Beatles, you have the entire biography of this act that came from the UK.
Yeah.
On the album, you have 6 songs on each side, 12 songs total.
Mhm.
And of the 12 songs total, we have 5 #1 worldwide pop records,
Yes.
reasonably priced, although my Aunt Dora paid for it back in
Yeah.
the 60s. Now we fast forward, and we're getting more tracks per album. They're overpriced, and if we're lucky, we have 1 hit single from the collection of 14.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in quantity of shit.
No.
I'm interested in quality, which is why, coupled with the internet and people's ability to download and listen for free,
Yes.
has become the perfect storm where people who I believe at the end of the day are not as stupid as we think they are. They're going to finally realize, you know what, the last couple of albums I purchased, whether it was CD or vinyl or download, the lion's share of it wasn't that good.
Oh.
So why don't I just steal it or stream it or just buy the single?
Yeah.
And therein becomes the issue of mediocrity becoming the gold standard. Because people who A&R'd these kinds of records in the 60s and in the 70s maybe didn't teach the next generation what was important, I'm guessing. And that next generation of record professionals didn't teach their inferiors who became superiors. And now we're left with people having to do collaborations with 3 or 4 or 5 songwriters,
Yes.
or 2 or 3 or 4 artists. Why? Because we're not sure if that record's going to do well by the artist alone.
I honestly think it was iTunes, because it became, you could buy a song. Before then it was CD, first it was vinyl, then CD came, and then iTunes came. Oh, look, that's my favorite of the album. So from album, it became a track market first. And then, as you say, the downloads and all that started. I can download the album, maybe later for free somewhere. But you bought singles, and it became a singles market.
Right. Before, because I'm a bit older than you, we would buy the 45s. That was my story about the main ingredient. So you could buy 45s, but 45s never made money for record companies.
No.
45s were simply a promotional tool.
Yes.
That, would pay for itself in theory between the pressing and the artwork and the shipping and the distribution, so that it would be the bait in the water for little Brad to run to the record store and buy the 2 main ingredient albums, right?
Album was the payoff.
Album was the payoff.
Yeah.
And you'd read the liner notes and you'd get excited about it.
Yeah, you could read it.
Maybe you'd clean
that
some
thing over and over.
marijuana if you're into that, or whatever. I'm just saying. So we fast forward now 30 years, and somewhere along the lines, this quality as you and I are talking about it fades away. It fades away.
Yeah.
And what's important to the 18 to 24-year-old demographic now is that word remix, which to me has become the equivalent to the mirrored ball image in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, there were clothing stores in New York called Remix. They don't even know what a remix is. So this word has become this iconic touchstone.
Yeah.
You turn on television tonight or, yes, movies, and you see that club culture repertoire is the prevalent musical backdrop to products that are being advertised that have nothing to do with music.
True.
So that's a good thing because they want that demographic, the 18 to 24-year-old demographic, to buy the car, the cell phone, the fashion, the soft drink, the fast food. Yeah. So our music that went from disco in the late 70s to dance to music, and it's gone through all these incarnations, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk about disco.
Yeah.
Only 3 years long, from 76 to 79.
Yeah.
And then you had the Disco Sucks, Disco Demolition at Comiskey Park in Chicago, and the word disco became a bad word. The music never went away, but the word became bad.
Yes.
And then it turned into freestyle, and then it turned into house,
Yes.
and then it turned into EDM, then it transformed back into house, and guess what it's become now? It's become disco again, isn't it?
Huge in the UK.
Dua
had-
Lipa's album, Future Nostalgia, #1 album.
Yeah.
Doja Cat, Say So, #1 pop record.
Mhm.
Nile Rodgers back with Daft Punk,
Yeah.
reemerged disco.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is. I
So
mean, it was
disco is no longer a bad word. Disco now is,
it's kind of cool, you know.
it's the kind of cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, people looked down on it because there was a lot of shit too. We have to admit, fabricated, you know, stuff. But there was a lot, like Chic, for instance.
Well, hold on. It was
Insane
producer
quality.
driven, and you're a producer.
I mean, Chic was my absolute favorite. You know, I could not believe, you know, the complexities of the string arrangements, you know, the chords, and I was completely obsessed with that. You know, and I still have a little flavor, you know, in my mixes. You know, my
Yes, I know
chord
you do.
choice. Yeah. So it was better than people slagged it off, and it became a swear word almost. You know,
Right,
but
exactly.
it was actually a lot of good music in there.
Mhm.
Complex, well written. You know, like fantastic music.
Well, I think some of the reason it was easily dismissed, let's use that as a nice way to say it, is because it really was producer driven and rarely featured a vocalist,
True.
right? And if it was vocalist, the lyric was very light. Dance with you, dance with me, I love you,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
love me. It meant very little. But
Mhm.
interestingly enough now, and this happened really with an act from Sweden, dare I say,
Mhm.
that, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, notice not if I am wrong, but if you think I'm wrong, that it was the Swedish house mafia that was the act that, in my opinion, broke the mold from EDM into a top 40 pop record.
Could be right, actually.
Before that, EDM was necessarily associated with festival DJs that were playing tracks.
Yes. It was a feature. It was a banging track, and then it was a bit drop down and some heartfelt vocal, 5 lines, and then a build up, and then bang, boom, back in.
But since Swedish House Mafia, which by the way will be returning, I'm happy to say, it then set off this stream of semi-aggressive club culture tracks
Mhm.
with featured vocalists, or we call them top line vocalists.
Yes.
I mean, Tiesto for years around the world was massive as a DJ, remixer, and artist. And in America, because of trance, not really.
Mhm.
But as soon as you put the vocalist on red light, everything changed.
Yeah.
And that led to, and that led to, and that led to, and it's still going today.
Yeah.
Therein lies the success of the Zeds of this world. And a lot of that started with your generation. Not necessarily my generation, because my generation really was the disco light vocalists.
Mhm.
But house music prior to that, to me, was always this religious gospel experience.
Yeah. The Chicago stuff was very, very much like that.
Yes, yes. And interestingly enough, also, though born in Chicago, it broke in the UK because British record reviewers heard about this movement in Chicago.
Yeah.
That was right down the road from us in the United States,
Yeah.
but never recognized. But only when UK writers came to Chicago to write articles like Melody Maker, etc., did people in America realize,
Wow.
it's right down the road.
Yeah.
But Americans, as I mentioned, mediocrity has become the gold standard. But with Sweden, in terms of pop records, the Max Martins,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Well, we have a
How do
song.
you think? How do you figure? How do you figure that? Where is that? Where? How does that happen? Sweden has always led with pop music, going back to ABBA.
This is true. We have a tendency to work hard, you know, and not to be bragging or, you know, posing or anything. We're sort of go down, you know, yeah.
Head down, nose to the grindstone.
Yes, and we work hard and we study things, you know, we study how the English do it, we study how the Americans do it, and we sort of make a little mishmash because we're not attached to US or UK or Germany or anything. We sort of take the best bits from. So we made a little compilation, and those guys, the House Mafia guys, they were complete geeks, you know, in the studio. They invented new kick drums, you know, how to use synths and do things, you know. They were really, you know, like really into the technical stuff. And Axel always had that chord, you know, like exclusive, you know, he had a touch of that. So he brought that in. And
You're referring to Axwell?
yes, Axwell.
Who you
would always,
I
you know,
believe, if memory serves, you featured on one of your original records.
I released his first record. It was an EP, like a jazz player, on Stonebridge Music. So I was part of history. He was a little kid from south of Sweden. He spoke funny, you know. He kind of came with he sent a cassette, I think, or a CD or something. And oh, that's kind of cool, you know. And
Not
I did
so
a
funny
remix
anymore,
of
is he?
that. And then we put it out in EP. It was through New York, Bob Shammy, Wacko Records.
Oh yes,
Distributed Sony Boy.
of course. Of course.
Yeah, handwritten. It was a guy on his lunch break, handwritten, you know, like the logo, and it was really lo-fi and kind of cool in that way. Shrink wrap. It had to be from the US because UK had these little slippery, crappy 45, 12 inches. New York vinyl.
The UK had the flimsy,
yes,
the flimsy 12-inch, right? And
New
America
York
had the solid.
shrink wrap.
Except in terms of real quality, in terms of music, America never used proper vinyl. Europe always used the heavier gram vinyl.
They did, and they
Therein
cut on
lies
45.
my point.
They cut it on 45, so it was a strong, nice sound. But you know, the American mastering. I mean, we in Sweden, we were like, oh man, New York. It's all about New York.
Herbie Powers.
I was just
Frankfurt Wayne.
We always checked in the store
with the smiley face.
Yes,
The nicest guy.
You open the vinyl in the record store just to see that he mastered it.
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
I'll take it.
So I want to mention something to you. So I mentioned to you at the top of this, right, that we just interviewed Tom Moulton.
Yes.
Who is really, depending upon who you ask, but most people would agree, the original remixer.
Yes.
That started in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
I asked Tom just last week, do you have any regrets about any of the music you did or didn't do?
This will be interesting.
And he just sat for a second. He goes, do you mind if there's any silence? I said, take your time. I'll let it out the time. It doesn't matter. He said, you know, Brad, I've done 6,500 records. But the one record I can kick myself for not remixing when I had the opportunity was Dancing Queen by ABBA.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
That is insanely interesting.
It's insane.
It makes me a little proud even.
Absolutely, right? So I say to him, well, back up for a second. If you offered it and he said he liked it, why didn't you remix it? He goes, well, you know what? At that same day, I was brought into the office in Atlantic Records. They had signed ABBA. And he said they had also signed my favorite act of all time, which was the Tramps.
Ooh.
He said at that point, in the same conversation with the president of the label, for whom he did a lot of work, he said, look, we're sort of on a deadline here. So I need Where the Happy People Go by the Tramps remixed, or this new record we just signed by this new act from Sweden. And he played it for me, he says. He said, I was listening to it. And he says and Tom says to the president of Atlantic Records, Jerry Greenberg, he goes, you know, I like it a lot. In fact, I think it's good just the way it is. But this is now almost 50 years later. Tom says to me, he said, you know, Brad, I got to tell you one thing. He said the original radio version from Europe was 4 minutes and 8 seconds long. And it peaked at a high note.
Yeah.
And the radio version in America peaked at 4 minutes, 2 seconds long. I mean, you want to talk about passion. This is like,
yeah, that is.
This is a record. He has never, ever forgiven himself for not remixing. I'm going to ask you the same question, Stan.
If there's
give me the regret. Give me the greatest moment and give me the most challenging moment. And you can take your time because I'll just edit out the dead time.
Honestly, I haven't turned down something that I regretted, actually. There's been a few where I felt, you know, like years later, man, I was lazy. I could have done that better. There's been a few of those.
Tell me, which are they? If you don't mind.
It's hard to, hard to remember. I just know that it happened. I can't tell you a particular one.
Okay.
But I'm actually, you know, especially in the old days when it was tapes and stuff, you know, it was a complicated process, you know. Now it's easier. You get stems, you put them in, you do the beat and you play the chords. But back in those days, you have to sing, you had to start and make sure the syncing was right. You know, maybe the tape drifted. It was a lot of challenges. So it took time. And I always spent the time on them, you know, like the craft thing, like a pride.
Absolutely.
So I've been lucky. I've never done something that I was like, oh,
yeah.
I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
So
well, that's, you know, it's all about one's choices. Life is about choices, isn't it?
Yes.
In every part of our life, personal and professional.
There could have been like an Armin van Buuren record or a trance record I turned down because I didn't feel that my sound would work on that record. There's been a couple of those. Or I feel that it's just a one-line record, you know, it's like, and it's not a really good line either.
Right.
Some tracks, you know, work like this, the Daft Punk style, you know, they have a sample and they have a vocal line. But if you take the sample out, you know, it's or the vocal out, it doesn't work anymore. It's the combination. And what's the point of changing the kick drum and add a clap? You know, it's not a remix, is it really? It's like
well, that's the difference between doing it to get it done and doing it to get it done properly.
Yes.
So I want to wrap up by asking, what's the future? What does it look like?
The future.
Everybody, you guys are still socially distanced, I imagine.
Yes, we are. I mean, we were late.
Are you back to? Are you locked down again now?
No, I mean, they're getting really excited and shouting about masks. You guys have been with masks for like a year. We had this herd immunity, retarded theory, you know, like, no, we better mingle and, you know, and it will pass soon. That was March last year. And the old people died like flies and it was like crazy. So they had to sort of change. Well, you know, it's a new virus, you see. It's a new variant from the UK.
Oh, okay, right. They made the right decision. It's just a new virus.
Yeah, they use that as an excuse. Oh, well, the first one wasn't too bad. You know, now it's really bad. So it's locked down. And I'm lucky to have, you know, this big house with a studio in here. So I do miss the live shows. And I didn't realize how much. You know, that chatter behind the booth, you know. You hear songs, you see happy faces, you know, you play a record, people go mad. Yeah. I never understood the social, how important it is.
It's everything.
The chit chat with other DJs, with people, you know, with fans and everything.
Well, humans are, we are bred to be social animals. It's in our DNA.
Yes.
However, people like yourself who spend most of the time in the studio anyway,
yeah,
notwithstanding touring, not that bad, you know, not that bad.
Yeah. So I work harder.
I bet you do. Anything to keep
Yes.
yourself occupied. And now you're there for your wife on a regular basis. She's loving it. totally.
Yes, she's happy. I'm always home. Well, to answer your question, I'm writing again and producing more. I just finished a big song with Shane Ward, a UK up and coming star. It started with a remix, Sash, featuring Shane Ward. And he really liked my work. So I said, hey man, we shouldn't write a song. And it reminded me of the good old days. That's how it happened, wasn't it? The remix, like how I met my wife. Yeah, why not? So we've written 4 or 5, and one now is picked as a single. We're gonna start in June, I think, both in US and UK. I'm really excited about that one. And I'm getting some big mixes. I did Rebecca Fiona, like mentioned EDM in Sweden. They came to me, they had a really nice song. Hey, Stonebridge, we would really be honored if you wanted. And I said, why not?
Honored.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I actually did KC. You had him on the show too, didn't you?
I did. And it was a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
Fantastic interview. Yeah.
I did his new single, Romantica, and he called me and sang which ad lib I had forgotten.
Yes.
In the
Yes,
second
yes.
verse, 2 seconds in, it's a and it was a tiny little.
That's correct.
missed it.
I said to Casey at the end of our interview, are you working on new music? He says, Brad, yes, I have 52 new songs. I said, 52 new songs? He said, yes. I said, okay. So
He's
he's
one
been
of us.
busy, he's been
He's
busy.
one of
and-
us, for sure.
absolutely, and he remembers exactly, of course, exactly. That's what it is. That's the passion.
I was very impressed by that. That's
Yeah,
detail.
well, he's a consummate, a professional, and talk about touring. He does about 50, 60 shows a year, and he tours with 20 to 25 people.
Oof.
Everything's on lockdown. So, listen, my friend, I'm not going to keep you because it's getting late for me, but much later for you.
Yes.
You know that I'm a fan.
Love
Anything
you always,
you
Brad.
need, I'm here. I love you to death.
Yes, love you too. I mean, I remember those mid-am years. I mean, how many discussions did we have?
And let's not forget Neil, busybody boy.
Yes.
God bless.
My
Have
brother.
a wonderful night. God bless you and your family. Stay safe.
You too.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Leave me.